So hello and welcome to the Happiness Telesummit. My name is Erica Glessing and I'm your host. I'm really motivated this year to activate happiness, and I've brought guests to bring you that gift of happiness and that sort of shift into happiness. And I have a beautiful guest joining me today from Northern California. Welcome, Evelyn.
Hi, Erica. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah, I am so glad you could come. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Evelyn. So, she is a business coach, a technical support goddess. She really is. She's a student of the shift. She teaches how to listen to the universal yes and tune in to divine energy. She's made her own journey from a software engineer to an archetypal consultant, body worker, and business coach for creative, spirit centered entrepreneurs. She's learned the value of paying attention to synchronicity and the universal yes and no. And she teaches us how to follow the energy, and she is in this amazing book. So it's called The Energy of Happiness. Doesn't it look familiar? We created it around the Happiness Telesummit. And so we really, really were thinking about, what is energy and how do we follow it? And what's the energy of happiness? And why don't you just give us an insight into that?
Thank you, Erica. Yeah, I know. I just have a life of joy. And one of the huge things that has really brought me to this state is, a letting go of reactivity, reaction. So many of us, when something happens to us, we just automatically react, or we hear something and we feel even a physical reaction sometimes. And I've just really learned how to kind of let go of reaction and turn that observer on. I call it a curious observer with a twinkle in the eye. So I like to be able to, like, when I see something happen, sometimes even if it's crazy or if it might be considered maybe in our past as something negative, to look at that and say, why is this happening for me? And always add the little twinkle in the eye to it, because there's always a wonderful aspect or learning out of everything that happens to us. And so my practice, the follow the energy practice, I use where if some decision comes into my world that I have to make, or I'm thinking about something that I want to do, I will just test the waves and I'll feel if it's a yes or a no. And, sometimes when we feel like we're going to go in a certain path, it'll just feel like every door is opening and things just happen like the skids are greased, it just flows. And then other times, it's like you're hitting a wall. And I found it really interesting because I was talking to somebody recently about this, and they felt like, oh no, I think that, when you hit those walls, you have to like push through them because you're being tested to see how much you really want it, And I thought, oh, well, I mean, maybe that works for some people. But for me, when I hit a wall, I'm thinking, oh, okay, let's take a step back and look for where the opening is. Where's the door? Why do I have to keep pushing? You can push through a wall. I mean, you can take a sledgehammer and break the wall down, but there might be a door just like 3 feet to the right that you can walk right through, and you can still get to the same place, with ease and grace.
One of the things I loved about your chapter, and one of the things I love about Evelyn is she truly lives and breathes this work. So Evelyn's always like taking workshops and taking classes and going to conferences and just nourishing herself, which I'm just in awe of that energy that you bring to that. And that's how I actually met her at one point. And I wanted to just ask you, when you're getting a yes, when you're feeling a yes, because a lot of our listeners are light workers themselves. A lot of people listening are intuitives. We're talking to the people who are kind of already living a guided life. And yet sometimes the yes feels, I don't know, scary or like a big risk, or like they don't have the infrastructure in place, or you know what I'm saying? So like, tell me about the energy of yes, and then maybe like how do we follow our intuition would be maybe what I'm trying to ask.
Okay, yes. Thank you for asking that. And I think what gets us afraid or stops some people is that we think that the yes has to be huge. Like okay, I've been asked to do this thing. I have to go from 0 to 60 and do the whole thing. And so then of course we have resistance because we don't know what's coming. We're not sure if we're even going to really want to do that, as time goes on. And so my philosophy is you take small steps towards it. So when you get, let's say, an invitation to do something, let's say like be on the Happiness Telesummit, or, be an author in the happiness book, The Energy of Happiness, instead of going, oh, I have all this huge project I have to do to achieve that, you say, well, what's the first step? How does that feel?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just, well, I need a photograph of myself, a headshot. Okay, well, how does it feel to do that? And all of a sudden you might talk to somebody who goes, oh, I have this great photographer. You give him a call. He says, well, I have time today.
Right.
Do you want to come? So it's just that.
Right.
And then that one thing you go, oh, okay, awesome. I got that done. So then you say, okay, what's the next thing that I need to do to get to this end goal? And then how does that feel? What's the energy of that? Because every big decision that we make is made up of many, many small decisions. And I like to follow the energy on a granular level, follow it. You want to feel a yes for the whole thing too.
Right.
Like if you're gonna move somewhere new, or if you're gonna, start in a new relationship, you want to feel that the whole thing has a yes to it. But you might just say you meet this guy and he's like really good looking and he's nice and he seems to be everything you want. You don't have to marry him. Like you can say, let's go for coffee, and then just see, and does that feel like a yes? And then you go to coffee and you have a nice conversation and you're like, okay, what would be the next step? Maybe it would be to, go on a hike together. Does that feel like a yes? And so I think that what I would encourage people is to not make things too big, to try to take small steps.
And I feel like that, like if you wanted to ask like a question you could ask yourself in the morning, say, oh, excuse, I'm sorry.
Bless you.
That's my first Happiness Telesummit sneeze. I call sneezes and noises and like lights turning off and on, I call those a what. That's basically when something's good or big, you get like a what. And that's usually some kind of like disruptive noise. And it means it actually, to me, is a way I know like we're on track. So I'm going to call a big crazy sneeze in my summit. I'm going to call it a what around what I was, the question that was showing up for me when you said that was, what inspired action can be in my life today? What can I do today? And what showed up for me too was the book that you wrote in is like, you want to be a published author. Well, now you're a #1 best-selling author on this book alone, Evelyn. And it started with a chapter. It started with a concept. It started with a message that you wanted to give. And so it was like this inspired action you took. And then a year later, here you are, a #1 best-selling author. And it's like, wow, how cool is that? But if you'd said no to the energy, you wouldn't have written the chapter. You wouldn't have let yourself write. You wouldn't have let yourself like teach a class or do a workshop or build something that shows up for you in that little creative place when you start to ask. And so I love what you just said about, and I can't really think in small actions. It's so funny. Like I just like, if I want to do a book, I want to do 12 books, And so it was really funny when I started, because one book would never make me happy. I mean, it just wasn't going to make me happy. And it was fascinating because so I created one book and I wasn't happy. And when I came up with the plan for 12 books, like I am still doing cartwheels. Like I am so happy. Like now now that I'm like building 12 books in a row, and you're on this one, I have another one coming out today. I'm going to go pick it today, and I have another one coming out next month. And then, oh my gosh, like this was last year, right? I had 2 books in the whole year. And then like this year, I'm doing like 14 books total. And here's the thing that's interesting about that, Evelyn, is that when you're shown something, I think like you have something that I just feel like so many people don't. So maybe just kind of share with me, and I'm learning it. Like I'm learning it. I'm starting to go with my crazy wild dreams, which are just not anyone else's, right?
Yeah.
And you have that gift of honoring your dreams. So maybe just get into that with us a little bit more, like how you meet clients. It seems like you meet them so amazing. It seems like you meet them all over the place. Maybe just tell us kind of how that flows for you.
Okay, yeah. And I just also wanted to validate your experience that, you know, like you just said, well, you did like 2 books last year and now you're going to do 14 books. So even though you have the capacity to do 14 books this year. So when you started following the energy, the very first book you ever did, or at that time when you were in that mindset of your very first book, you probably would have been panicked to do 14 in a year. So, it can be year to year we're growing. So, you might have taken smaller stuff. There you go. So every time you take a step, you build on it. And I love one time I was at an event and the woman said, when you start a new, like a new endeavor, she said, don't forget to look in the rearview mirror. Which means don't forget what you've done before. What skills do you already have? What experiences do you have in your past that you can bring forward into this new endeavor that you have? So you always have a rear view mirror. I'm just getting a chill for some reason for that. And so like you have this rearview mirror of all of your experience that you bring to this year's 14 books. So I just wanted to share that for everybody, don't forget you have a rearview mirror and you have skills and experiences and things behind you. And so when you feel that energy, sometimes you can take a huge movement because that's small in relationship to what you're capable of. Some people have these huge capabilities, so they can make a step that to somebody else would look, oh my God, I could never do that. That's such a huge step. But if it's in your wheelhouse, if it's your expertise, you can take big leaps. It's like an athlete who can do the long jump. They can go, flying through the air, and we would get up there and we'd go bump, and we would go like, 2 feet, because that's, we're not trained for it. We're not ready for it, but they are. And so, so trust your own experience. And when we move forward, that's part of it. And to back up, I didn't want to go off of your question, but I just wanted to reassure you that no, your path is perfect, And so
I have to say on that, I'm just going to comment on that because every once in a while, like you said, your path is perfect. And I have to say, I woke up in January this year, first time in I don't know how long, at least a decade. And I was so peace in my career space.
Wow.
I was just like, I have a beautiful year ahead. Like, I'm so blessed. Like, everything I could see showing up was showing up. And I think like you said, like there were times where this wasn't true, where I'd wake up and go, what else do I have to do? What else do I need to create? What else do I have to manifest? How can I make this work? And it was that making, which I feel like is really at the guts of what you teach, is that making energy is not always the energy that's going to give you the glory. Because in this new energy of just finding out, what would be a good book? What do people want to write? How can I support the authors? What is it that I could bring? What is it that could come through me and then open up more doors for everybody I work with? Like, and as I let go of needing that to be so controlled, it's like, wow, I meet these fabulous people like Evelyn And Evelyn, I have to say, just opened up her Rolodex for me when we were doing the happiness book. And she must have sent me, I don't even know how many of the authors that ended up being in my books. It was like, hey, you should meet Erica. And then one of them, Sylvia Olivier, is the last speaker on the summit. She's and she's in 3 of my books this year. And she teaches Golden Heart Wisdom. And she's changed my life. Wow. And so if I hadn't met you, she changes my life. Do you know, she's one of those people, if I just feel her energy, she changes my life. Like I can just reach over to Canada.
Yeah.
Feel her. I feel better.
Yeah.
And you introduced me to her. Can you believe that? It's like, so
there's
amazing.
So much. I know, and I've met more. I have a cluster of Canadians I love, and one of the Canadians I connected with this year, she's creating a whole thing called the I Love Me Year, and it just, I'm like, oh, that's just so juicy, you know. and so and so like you were asking about how do I meet people and how does this synchronicity kind of flow, and
you're so good at it.
It's like I'm not good at it. I'm a receiver of it. It's a blessing that for some reason I receive, and I receive it with open heart and open mind. And you know, I was just at an event last weekend in Las Vegas, and it was just so funny because I live in a small town in Northern California, Nevada City, and I had 3 conversations with different women from all over, one from Virginia, you know, one from Seattle area, all different places. And when we would connect, we would say, well, where are you from? You know, how far did you travel? And I'm from a town in Northern California, Nevada City. And they're like, I know somebody in Nevada City. And you're kidding. Well, who is it? Like this one woman, she told me his name. He's a friend of mine. And I'm just, I said, this is just so much fun. So I said, I have to I just looked him up in my phone right then. I said, I have to chat him and tell him that I'm sitting here talking to you, because they were accountability partners in a coaching group she was in.
Oh
so
my
she
gosh.
had, she's never been here. Yet, you know, and yet she knew a friend of mine, and it was, and that happens to me all the time. And so, you know, then I talked to another woman, and she knows a very, very dear friend of mine who lives at a spiritual community called Ananda that's near here. And it's just, how's that? And then, you know, and it happened all day long. I kept meeting people who knew my friends, and I'm like, this is really fun.
Well, you also introduced me to the cover designer. So I'm just going to show your book again. This is Evelyn. I'm just going to show her book again. There she is right there. So the cover designer, Melinda, is designing a cover for me for another book today. Actually, she's actually designing a book called Sacred Activation. She's doing the book cover right now on a book by a channeler. And it's a really fascinating book. And I always match authors and cover designers, you know, I match the energy of them. And so you matched me with her, and now I want to think she's designed 5 or 6 books for me.
Wow.
She just did another one on healing. She did the cover, and it's really funny because she did the first version, and I said, oh, that's a little feminine. I think there's more males in this book. So can you go a little bit more, you know, masculine? So then she goes masculine, and it was hideous. I mean, it was like, oh God, those are not the right covers. So we went back to the original one. And then the book ended up being almost all women after all. So it's really interesting that she hit it intuitively so perfectly. And so think about that. I'm just going to ask the listeners that when you wake up and someone shows up in your head that you might want to text or say hello to, you want to do that, because it's not linear. So that if you wake up and you think, I should really contact Evelyn, or Evelyn should say, I should really contact Erica today. It's like, if she didn't do that, none of these things would have happened. If you just think about that, if we hadn't connected, hadn't met at a writer's seminar, didn't have the book together, I wouldn't have my cover designer. It's like, if we look back at those little magic instances, and I feel like I just want to bring that to everyone's attention, to be open once you've had a desire, that it can show up differently, but pay attention, right? I mean, that's really what your chapter's about.
Yeah, and that to develop trust. In fact, that when we first talked about doing this interview this year, I really kind of wanted to bring out the concept of trust, because trust is really the end result of my whole practice of follow the energy. Well, it's kind of the end result, and it comes at the beginning too, because you have to trust to be able to follow the energy. But then the more you do it, the trust shifts into this deep trust, where after you have done a practice like this and you take a little step and okay, that door opens, that one doesn't, no problem, here's one that opens, and you just start feeling your way that way, you just realize the universe is this benevolent place that wants the best for you. And so if you feel that, just a deep level kind of joy or trust that, this is a benevolent place. And if I make it hard, sometimes it's from other things, and there's other practices and stuff I work with, family constellation work, archetypal work. So there's sometimes other stuff that's maybe not even our stuff that makes it hard, and we can clear those things. But in general, it's open to all of us to feel that sense of trust that, life is benevolent. It wants what's best for us. Take little steps. You'll get guidance. We all get it.
Right.
And it was so fun connecting with you, and just the connections that we've had, and like Melinda, I connected with Melinda through, I have this whole chain of people that, one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And now I have this amazing group of people in my life. And it, like you said, it starts with just when you wake up in the morning and you have an idea, take a step towards it. You don't have to leap off the cliff, just take the step and see what shows up, and if it feels right. And that we all are one of those links in so many people's lives, and to never underestimate your power. That, when you meet somebody, you could start a ripple that changes their life, and you don't have to feel like I have to change their life. Like I'm doing a lot of business coaching now. My business, I'm really focusing on business coaching for tender hearts, which tender hearts are my target audience. And so, sometimes they think of, oh, I want to create a business, and they just get overwhelmed and they have this huge block and they can't move forward. And sometimes they can't move forward for years because of a fear of something. Like one client, she had a fear of, she wanted a website, and she felt like if I don't have a website, I can't really be an official business. That was her belief.
Right.
And so she, like from 1994, she told me, until I think we started working together about 4 years ago, she had wanted a website, but she was so fearful around technology that she sat there stuck. And then because she didn't have a website, she felt like she couldn't really sell herself, because then they would say, well, what's your website? And so her fear of them saying, what's your website? And then her feeling the shame of saying, I don't have one, because of the fear, it just leads to this cascade of stuckness. And so once we connected, and I'm like, well, let's just start with, what colors do you like? It can start with a simple step. And we went through, she did some serious work on herself during our process of working together. I mean, it was really huge for her to finally open up, to be able to receive a website into her life. And it is so funny, because you should see her now. I always brag about her because she's like one of my star pupils. She will email me and she'll ask me for the HTML tag to do something, or some and I'll have to write back to her and I'll say, do you realize what you just did? You just asked me for HTML, and you were the person who felt almost suicidal after talking about what colors you liked for your website, because she had so much story built around it. And so that's the thing that is so beautiful, to not, she had made it too big. And so I
Right. And
think,
I have that. It's funny with Happy Publishing. Sorry, I keep showing my books, but I'm so excited
yeah,
that Evelyn's an author. So excited.
yes.
Best-selling author. I'm so excited about Evelyn. This was last year's book, so Manifest Change. Yeah, change is good. So Happy Publishing doesn't have a website, and so people are like, you need it. I go, you know what? Go to Amazon, type in Erica Glessing. That's one. And then two, I'm my website.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't mean I won't. I'm still working on it. Everything's kind of going mobile now. So I'm
Hmm.
interested in
Hmm.
how the website will look on the phone and how you put 250 authors on a website gracefully. And,
Yeah.
it's really a big, hairy website.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's not that
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it, but I'll tell you what, I can see what you're saying because I have heard that a lot. And I feel like sometimes people use things
Hmm.
and they can be a website, they could be children, they could be they use, and I don't want to say, it's not, excuses is the wrong word, but they use, how can I stay small? Because if I
Hmm.
get big, it's scary to me. If I am
Yeah.
in creation and if I am teaching and if I'm making money doing what I love, that feels really interesting. Like it's not going to work at a regular job. It's not, I was
Hmm.
just thinking about like a move and I'm not being transferred. And I was thinking, gosh, it'd be so much nicer if I was being transferred. Say,
take
I'm
take
being,
some of the responsibility away.
I'd be like, I'd be transferred. It's not my
Right.
control. It feels so
Right.
good. It's like, oh, but if you just like, you are a publisher and you can actually live anywhere in the world,
Yeah.
and all I need is
Yeah.
operational internet, and really I can, wow, I was at the beach going, oh my gosh, that feels crazy because I looked back at every other move I'd ever done, Evelyn,
Hmm.
and it was always about the job. Every
Yeah.
move I'd ever made
Wow.
in my life,
Hmm.
except for my parents, and that was about their jobs, but they moved a lot. And then I got news reporting jobs. I wrote for the Sacramento Bee, and I wrote for the Tahoe Daily Tribune. I wrote for the Santa Barbara paper. So all my moves were about, where am I going to go work?
Wow.
And so as I'm looking at shifting into a nicer place,
Hmm.
I don't have that external thing.
Hmm.
And it's really different. And I want to just tell people that if, like what Evelyn just said about a client that was afraid of not being able to do this because of that, what's really funny is when you open up the box bigger, and like Evelyn was saying, there's all these doors. And so Evelyn does this thing where she's like, well, what door would work? You don't really get content
Yeah.
with, you can't do it. That doesn't work
No.
for you.
No.
You
No.
don't do that. I've
Mhm.
watched you.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, and I studied body work at a healing school in Nevada City here, and we did an exercise one day where we went to a local park and we had blindfolds on and we had to just walk around the park and we had somebody with us to make sure we didn't like fall off a cliff or something, get hurt. But we had to just, with a blindfold on, feel the energy and actually, like you
Wow.
would feel when a tree kind of bloomed, you felt the energy of the tree. So you could go,
Wow.
oh, there's something in front of me. And you would like put your hands out and you would feel, and then bump, you'd touch the tree, and then you could move around the tree because you now had something to like, orient yourself. So you could go, okay, move around the tree. You used it as a guide. And
Yeah.
then there was open space again. And then you could like let go into the open space and walk across the park and feel with your feet. And then you might like hit a curb. Okay, well, let me see. Can I go over the curb? Does the curb end? So that was really, that just came to me, in fact, as perhaps
Nice.
instrumental in my journey that,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that because, we can't with our eyes. I mean, some people can, but I can't see energy with my eyes. So so it's more a feeling. And so it's kind of like that, like you bump into something, it's like, oh, here's a tree, well, let me feel along it, is there an end to it, is there an opening? And so it can be kind of like that, and so sometimes when, let's say you're invited to do something that you really think you want to do, and you try to get a plane ticket and they're all sold out, you try to get the hotel, it's all sold out, you ask a friend to drive you and none of your friends will do it. Your car breaks down. Sometimes we've had that happen. Like we go, I really want to do that thing, and it's like everywhere. It feels like there's a block. And so then sometimes it's like, okay, well, just sit back and feel, like start feeling, maybe talk to some other people, maybe call the people who are doing the event and ask, are you going to have another one? Like maybe in a few months, try to kind of feel the edges of it and find out, there might be a door somewhere else. And so,
good job. Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. I want to let people know that Evelyn is making a special offer. So if you'd like to work with Evelyn further, she is presenting a deep dive session with her. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is and what someone might expect?
Yeah, well, it's my kind of deep dive, feeling into the energy, and we really kind of look at where you're at. We look at your life and where maybe you're feeling blocks. And I kind of started this at the beginning of 2015 because the energy feels so different for so many people I've talked to, that 2015 has a lot of possibility, but sometimes they don't have clarity around what they're going to do with that, with that energy. And so I'll just ask a lot of questions. We'll go really deep into what you really want and what's the really want behind the really want. Sometimes there's like 3 layers deep of, okay, you want this, but then what will that bring you? How will that make you feel? Oh, well, it'll make me feel like this. Well, why do you want to feel like that? How are you feeling now? So we'll go into, different questioning and really, like, I'll really be with you and find out what's coming up for you. Where are your blocks? What are your goals for the year? What might help you get there? And we just will follow the energy where the deep dive takes us. And I had one client that after we did one of the deep dives, she just couldn't believe it. I mean, she just sent me an email like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Thank you so much for asking me that question. I had never thought of that. And it completely changed her path with something she was working on in her business. And so sometimes it's, and I have this intuitive magical connection gift that I feel that I have. And so oftentimes when I connect with somebody, I'm immediately, I'm also a student of human design, and my design is that I kind of have this ability to pull things out of thin air. It's what I had a person who's a human design consultant, and they did a reading on me, and they said, your chart says you have this ability to tap into the resources of the universe, and then you just pull it and then you give it to them. And I don't know what it's going to be till I'm with them, but sometimes I'll go, oh, you need to meet this person, or oh, you need to do this. I just had one of these sessions with one of my clients a few weeks ago, and I really was feeling that he needed to take his business to corporate clients. He's been doing this for a long time. He's a famous sound healer and been on every Telesummit, amazing man. And I'm like, you need to get this into corporate clients. He writes me a letter the next day. He goes, you really stirred up some SHIT. He goes, I hope you're happy with yourself. He said the next day somebody contacted him and said, we're going to do a retreat for stressed out CEOs. And we'd like you to come. And it was just the very next day. And so it's just so much fun when these things happen. And then I'm like, yay. It's because it's just, I believe that when you have synchronicities happening, go in the direction that makes them happen more. Because the synchronicities are like the lubrication of your path, and they're showing you that you're going the right way. So when he wrote me that, it was just really fun, and I'm excited, and I know he's going to help some amazing, and he comes from a corporate background. When he became a healer, he left corporate. And I know with that background, he's looking in his rearview mirror. You have that experience. You can take that.
Right. You can talk to that language. Yeah.
Yes. And so I'm just getting chills again, just thinking of how many of these stressed out CEOs that he can be called to help. And he wasn't at all looking at corporations as clients. So, or people who work in corporations, you know,
right.
I don't think he's
it's like it's like he forgot some of his gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And then having that third person look at what's possible. And the other amazing thing about working with Evelyn, so I can say that I've hired Evelyn to do technical work for me. And what I love is she's psychic also. So you don't have to be a great communicator. Like, she can help you anyways. Like, sometimes people who are really kind of in their creative space have a hard time putting words on the technology pieces or what might be the right technology for them. And one thing I love about you, Evelyn, is you just like get it. And you do enough research into what healers need and what these tender heart people need, that you have just this huge spectrum of in your toolkit yourself, because you're so interested in it, right? And it's funny, the only time it cracks me up is sometimes Evelyn's so interested in the technology and I get in overwhelm and I'll go, okay, I trust you.
Yeah. Well, and that most of my clients do that. That's a common right brain trait is we go into overwhelm. That's just a natural way we go. So if you're out there and if you go into overwhelm and you're very creative in your right brain, just know that you're normal.
Well, the link is right here. It's on her website /happiness, and we're going to send you over to work with Evelyn if that feels like a good fit for you. And Evelyn, do you want to just send us out with like just a thought or an idea to help people go into their day?
There was one question that I got at this event I was just at. Let me see if I can remember the wording of it, because I thought it was so powerful. And it was, I think it was, if you could help people know one thing, what would that be? And if they knew that one thing, or if they learned that one thing, how would the world be different? If everybody, so it's kind of like if everybody knew that one thing, how would the world be different? And know that if you're a healer or a practitioner and you have an amazing message and you have this special thing that helps people, imagine if everybody knew that, or if everybody felt it, how would the world be different? And so imagine that, and know that you are making the world different, one person at a time. Thank you. Not hold it back. Share that because you're here to share that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mwah.
Thank you. Thank you. Mwah. Thank you for a lovely conversation.